welcome to the One Life Podcast. We talk about things from One Life Church, but ultimately things we think can relate to you and your one and only life. My name is Sarah Inman. I'm one of your co-hosts, and I'm joined, as always, by co-host of the podcast and our lead pastor, Brett Nicholson.
Co-host of the podcast.
Yep.
I still have the title. Always have.
Yeah.
We don't have plates or anything on our office doors, but someday when we do, that's going on there.
That's what it'll say. Podcast host.
Podcast host.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay, I like it. So we here at One Life just finished a series called Restore, Rebuilding the Broken Soul, and we spent 8 weeks.
I think it was even more than that. Might have been as many as 10. It was wild.
We did add a couple extra weeks.
Yeah.
And we had some episodes on the podcast before, and highly recommend you go back and check out some of those. There's some people coming on and talking about some ways to restore. We know a lot of people have had some experiences and changes in life over the last year and finding ways to kind of work through that. We still have resources there at onelifechurch.org/restore. You can still check those out. But today, we're having a conversation with Andi Miles. Hi, Andi.
Hi, guys.
Andi's
host and co-host.
Yeah, host and co-host. Andi's been on the podcast before, and it's a special conversation with Andi today because she's had a change in her life.
I have.
Yeah. Andi, first off, I want to start out. Tell us who you are and what do you do? Or did you do?
I am Andi Miles. What I did do for a lot of years was I have been the Next Gen Director here at East and for our network over the last, I've changed roles kind of over the last 10 years, but I've been in kids ministry for the last 10 years here at One Life. Been in ministry for 18 years.
18 years is a long time.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Especially if you think of like adults. 18 is the age that people were considered adults, right? Is that still correct?
I'm not sure anymore. I think they pushed it to 21, and now I think it's being pushed to like 26.
Oh, wow.
I think that's a thing.
That's true, because like you can stay on your parents' insurance till you're 26 now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but normally I think of like 18 as adults, so that means you would have been with some kids from the time they're born until they're basically adults.
Right. Yeah, I started when my oldest was 6 weeks old.
Oh my goodness.
And she's graduating this year.
That puts it all in perspective, ladies and gentlemen.
It's a long time.
Wow. So it might be time for a little bit of a change in direction in life. It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me, first off, I want to define that for people. And when they're talking about kids ministry, what does that mean?
Kids ministry. Okay, so kids ministry is, people probably think that it's while the big kids are in church, their kids go to these other rooms. But kids ministry really, in the 10 years I've been at One Life, it has been just creating experience for kids to help them experience Jesus in a fun and creative way. It's not childcare, it's not babysitting. It is truly helping kids trust and follow Jesus.
And we had that drilled in our heads, those of us who work here. If you ever called it childcare, if you ever called, you were. I mean, you guys did a really good job of that. I could feel the guilt when it started to come out of my mouth every now and then, or the kids' area or whatever else. And so you did a great job with that. Got it through our heads. So that's good.
You learned.
Everybody needs to know that.
Learned.
I did.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a little bit about kids ministry. I mean, and there's some creative things that One Life Kids has been doing. I mean, I remember my first coming and people talking about how amazing, kids ministry was, because it really was like just having this really cool experience for kids, but also teaching them at the same time, and them coming back with takeaways that they can talk about with their families. And I remember, some of my friends coming out with their kids being like, I can't wait to go back. So there's always been a really cool environment in kids ministry, and Andi's been a part of making that happen for at least 10 years here, and some time before that in other places as well.
Right.
Okay, but you're making a change.
I'm making a shift.
Tell us about that. What is it?
I am going to Community One. It is a neighborhood revitalization organization here that helps our community basically love their neighbors, take care of their neighbors. So there's a lot of home revitalization, neighborhood revitalization. So I'll be their mobilization director. I'll be over mobilizing volunteers out into the community and making sure that they are in the right spots.
Some maybe remember Community One as the Needed Neighbor organization too. When COVID first happened, there was a website called Needed Neighbor where you could just see needs and people would fill them, and they're the ones that drove that. So I know we had several people in our church participate in that. So that's the same organization, and their real thing is to do the neighborhood revitalization things. But that was a connection point for everybody.
And they're getting ready to unroll something real similar to Need a Neighbor, cool. To where it's just a place people can go to just help in the community that's not so big like home revitalization, but just when neighbors need something, they go on this website and put what they need, and then people can go and fill that need.
I didn't know that. See, we have an inside track now. Now we know this probably before it was even released to the public.
It's not released yet, but it's in the works.
All right.
It's on the podcast. So.
It is. Made it on
Stay tuned into the One Life podcast for insider information.
Yep.
That's right.
Okay, so that's a pretty big change.
It is a big
change. To go from full-time ministry in a church to really ministry in a different way, community ministry, and a totally different organization. That couldn't have been an easy thing to process through, but kind of, can you walk us through what that was like? Because I think for people, if they've spent any time in nonprofit world and ministry, I think that's something we ask sometimes, like, well, there's other opportunities. Like, tell me how you got there.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good question. I'm not really sure how I got there. I was not actively looking for something. However, I think we have all felt over the last year just this sense of wanting to do more, especially in ministry. How can we do more? And is what we're doing while we're in the middle of this pandemic enough? And so there was kind of an inner turmoil within me in the last year that I was, is this where God wants me? Am I being pulled to something different? And just happened to see this job description for Community One, and I was really intrigued because being out in the community has been something that has just really been on my heart. Well, I think what we do here is so very important, and what I've done for the last 10 years with kids and leaders is so very important. There was just something pulling me to something different. And so it just kind of led to that. I would never have dreamed that I would be where I'm at now, because especially just with the people I've got to work with over the last 10 years, I loved what I do or did. Yeah. I loved it.
So you're still kind of here this week. So technically your last day was Sunday. And
was kind of in between. Did
some cool stuff. Brett took you on stage and made you share a little bit.
Highlight of her life right there. Yeah, that's right.
No, it was a great day. Just a lot of surprises I was not expecting on Sunday. So it was very, very sweet.
And I think another thing too is, you guys have said that you and your family are still attending One Life, and I think that's important to kind of like get out there. And one of the things we've been wanting to do anytime people have made a shift in jobs from staff here at One Life, we want to bring them on the podcast and talk about it, because I think it is cool to hear not only what you're going to and the excitement of that, but learn from some of the things that you've had experiences of working here. And so we want to do a little bit of that, and maybe even ask some questions just about things you wish every parent would know. And so we've got a couple questions on here, but I think just starting out, like, what have been some of your favorite parts of being a part of leading kids ministry? Because I think a lot of times people are like, oh, you lead kids ministry, so you work with kids, and that's not necessarily the case. You do, but mostly you're working with a lot of volunteers, which is similar to what you're getting ready to do for Community One, just in a different capacity, I guess, or a different way. So what have been some of your favorite parts over the last 18 years?
Oh, there's been a lot. Working with the leaders is really a big one. I do work with kids, or have worked with kids, but the majority of my years have been spent just building leaders and working alongside leaders, and just get the relationships that I've formed over the last 10 years are really, just one of my favorite things. Watching these teams go from, new people on teams to family together is so, so cool to see. Another one of my favorite things, and Sunday was just an example of this, when the kids do come up and hug me, even though I don't get to spend a lot of time with them, I do, of course, when we're shorthanded or something, I always jump into that role. But when they come up and they hug me, Andi, it feels so good. So that's another one of my favorite things. But seeing also just the creativity that happens in our kids ministry to help kids know Jesus in a fun way just blows my mind. Yeah. Just seeing the energy and the faithfulness that people have put into that. has just been so fun to watch.
And that's probably what a lot of adults don't really appreciate or understand or get to see, because there is a whole teams back there that pour all kinds of light, they're volunteering, they have jobs, but they come in here even during the weeknights and things and put things together where they have filmed all kinds of interesting stuff and come up with all kinds of wacky ideas and allow themselves to just humbly, serve kids, and it goes on with a lot of velocity and energy. And there's been a ton of that kind of creative stuff go on week after week after week for years and years and years. A lot of times from the same core team, but there's also people being added all the time. So,
and I think if kids think that it's fun and they want to be here, your opportunity to introduce them to Jesus is even greater.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they do a great job.
And it's another value I know that people need to understand as well, is not only the creative side, but the high emphasis on relationships with the kids. Because there was always we was drilled into our head that you never called it childcare or babysitting. I got that part. And that it wasn't that the adults were there to form relationships with the kids. It wasn't just to entertain them or do fun things. It was actually to get to know them and be there and be a steady influence in their lives, and you brought a lot of that to that, and that was a high value.
Right. Yeah. And just creating a safe space for kids to be able to talk about or question anything that they're going through, or how to be able to talk to leaders is just huge. And we have some of the greatest leaders here who just take time for these kids, and the things that we hear and the things that kids are experiencing can blow your mind. But to be able to provide a space for them to pray with them and, have a relationship is huge.
Especially if you think of, you really only get an hour, a week. For the most part. Sometimes there's other things going on, you guys will do throughout the summers and events, but most of the time just 1 hour a week to make that connection and impact, and to think that they look forward to that every week is really cool. And I know you've said in the past, but I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think part of why we're a part of this, even all of us in ministry, is the people we get to work with, and the volunteers specifically. So I know for you that you've got to really connect with some amazing people, and they make it fun, and really add something that, they come with their experience, out in maybe not a full-time ministry job, and come back and be like, hey, well, if we did this with kids, even during early COVID stuff, trying to figure out how do we talk to kids about what that means, and using some characters, that we've created here at One Life over the past. So are there any leaders that you've just really seen thrive in your time here at One Life, leading kids ministry?
Oh, yes, there's lots. There's a story that comes to mind when you ask that question of one of the ladies, and I always tell her story because she was serving in preschool for many years here at East. She was in preschool, and she just said, Andi, I'm tired. I'm just tired. I don't want to leave kids ministry, but I just need to do something different. I said, that's fine. Let's have coffee. Let's sit and talk about it. Tell me what you're thinking about. Tell me what your background is. Tell me, what's something that you love to do. And she was a dancer. She had taken dance for many years. And so I said, well, what about trying a worship leader? We do a lot of worship music in kids theater with a lot of dancing. It's just one way we worship. And she tried it, and she's been doing that for a few years. And that team has come together, and they are a family. Her dad passed away a couple of years ago, and every one of them showed, from the kids in the worship team to the adults. Every one of them showed up at the funeral home for her. So seeing people find their sweet spot, but even having that conversation, because a lot of people would just kind of sneak out, okay, I'm done. But for her to sit down and have that conversation, and then to see her thrive in that was huge and just so fun to watch.
That's something that I think people don't maybe know or don't see, that is where the real special things that we can't emphasize enough is when you are on a team, the design, the ideal, it doesn't always happen necessarily this way, but what you just said is that team becomes family. I mean, if you what happens to me if I go to the hospital? What happens to me if something like I lose someone I love or whatever? How am I connected to the community? Well, it's not just to go back and serve in kids and do a thing on Sunday morning. The ideal, and it does happen in real time, that these teams help one another, and they're there for one another, and that's the thing that we're trying to work towards. And I know you've supported that, pretty powerfully and pretty steadily through the years to create that kind of environment. Mm-hmm. So love that, and we don't want to lose that part when you leave.
Yeah. No, I hope it stayed. These teams, especially those that have come back from COVID, have just really been, the people that have come back have really come back because they were part of something. They felt like they were a part of a family. So it's been so fun to watch the momentum since we have come back. And these teams just continue to get stronger.
Yeah. And even when you share that story, I think that's something that we can't just gloss over and not say that, I mean, that should be celebrated in your leadership, that she felt comfortable to come to you and say, not just walk away. Like she felt like she had a relationship with you to come to you and say, hey, I don't want to leave, but I'm still, what can I do? So that's really cool. And I think you should, that's something you should be proud of, to be able to have those kind of relationships with your leaders. And actually that's a question that actually Michael Kieran actually asked this question in our staff meeting. What are you most proud of? Like, what are things when you look back, the 10 years here, could be 18 years, of other times, what are some things you're most proud of?
That's a good question too. Well, first and foremost, I'm most proud when I see our kids being baptized. When I see them being baptized, but also when I see them being baptized by their leaders, or they've asked their leaders to be a part of that. I'm so proud of the relationships that have been formed between that leader and that kid, that they would ask for them to be a part of that.
That's cool.
And for a child to make a decision to follow Christ, it's the most important decision they can make. So I'm so proud of those opportunities that we get to watch kids be baptized. I'm just so proud of, like I've said, just the teams that have formed, the relationships that are just so strong, because I do believe that helps with the creativity. It helps with helping kids experience Jesus. All of those things combined just makes me so proud to watch a Sunday come together and kids walk away, excited. And even over Easter was one of the best I've ever experienced. We did it a little bit differently, where one of the teams kind of rewrote what our curriculum was, and we did a small group activity that the whole room did together. That it was basically, we told the story, it was in a box, and then at the end, when Jesus rises from the dead, they open their box and there's light shining from their boxes, and it's a big party and dance music. And I got a message from a mom that day that said my child could tell me everything from your illustrations about the Easter story.
You're kidding, really?
Yeah.
Wow. See, wow. I didn't know that. Is that on video?
We did. Yeah, we did put it on our Facebook page. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it is on our Facebook page?
On the Kid Next Gen one. Yeah.
Next Gen group.
Next Gen group.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's great.
So those moments right there, when a kid can walk away and tell mom and dad exactly what they've, experienced is really fun. Makes me really proud.
Well, I bet. And think about those those are experiences that you get to have, but you can still do that. You can still be a part of that. Our volunteers get to be a part of that every week. And so there's a lot of ways to still be involved in that. It just changes the way that you kind of lead that. When we talk about parents, you talk about parents, calling and sending you messages. What are things, or what are some things that you wish you could tell all parents about the next generation? Because I know that some of the things that, One Life we've really invested in is taking our next gen leaders, sometimes volunteers, sometimes staff, into trainings to talk about what's some good ways to really invest in the next generation, and talk about how parents and families can do that. Because, one of our kind of models is to say that we partner with parents. It's not just something we come in and expect them. We don't expect them to drop them off and us teach them. They have a lot more time with them than you guys do. What are some things you wish you could tell all parents?
Right. That's a great way to explain when we talk about Orange here, to explain the Orange philosophy, is that the church has only about 40 hours a year to invest in the life of a kid, but parents have 3,000 hours. And so they definitely are, the spiritual leaders for their kids. And so what I would tell parents is, I'd be asking a lot of questions. What are they learning? What are they experiencing? And then having those conversations, deeper conversations at home. But I was thinking about this question. You gave me these ahead of time. I was thinking about this question in my own kids' lives, in that my middle schooler her, we have Wednesday night students, and Wednesday night students for her is such an important time. It is a safe space for her to be able to talk to a consistent leader. And she's a different kid when I pick her up on Wednesday nights, because she's been able to just talk and just be and have relationships. And so whether it's in the church or somewhere, our kids need voices in their lives. They need people who are telling them, how valuable they are, how loved they are, and ultimately that, they're created in the image of God. And so I would just tell parents to make sure those voices, and recognize who those people are in your kids' lives. I text Lainey's small group leader almost weekly and just thank her for dealing with middle school girls.
Yeah, because that's a very special gift.
Yes.
And thank her for stepping out and doing that.
Yeah.
And my kids are grown now, but I can say that if I had to do it over again, absolutely. I mean, you have a certain kind of voice as a parent that has its limits. It just does. And you need to be proactive about putting other voices in your kids' lives. And that is what, and maybe you don't think of that as being kids ministry or student ministry. You're just thinking maybe my kid enjoys this or whatever else. But really what you're doing that's more important is that right. Whole thing. You're giving them another relationship, another voice, another set of ears to listen to their problems that you need, because there's certain things you just can't get across. We've all had that. You could say the exact thing that their mentor or their student leader says, and they'll hear it from them, and they won't hear it from you.
Right, exactly.
They'll think you're dumb for saying it or whatever else. I've had that happen 1,000 times. So that's just how it goes.
They come back 2 years later, and I'm like, guess what I learned? You're like, I've been telling you that for 5 years.
So
that's
true.
Exactly true.
And yet you have to swallow it and be like, that's
you
great.
You got to humble yourself and say, okay, I'm going to work on getting those different voices in their lives.
And that's why I recognize her, each week, even though she's saying the same things. I'm just like, thank you for being another voice telling her the same thing, and she's listening to you. So.
Yep.
I mean, Andy, all this sounds like a lot of fun. Why are you leaving? I don't get it.
Yeah, that's right.
It
What's
really
the matter with
is.
you?
It is.
What's the matter with you?
And I think that I genuinely, that's a question, and we talked about that earlier. You just see a great, amazing opportunity. But I think a lot of times when people leave a ministry job, they're like, what happened? Did something happen? And I think it's always important for us to say that there's no scandal of any kind, that, we're kicking Andy out or something like that. It's just a really amazing opportunity for you to take a lot of the skills that you've learned even here and use them in a new way. And honestly, I was thinking about this when we were praying on Sunday, and I almost prayed, but I started getting emotional. Sometimes that happens. Andy and I are very good friends. Okay. This is going to be hard for me. But it'll also I'm very excited to learn all the things you get to learn. But I genuinely was thinking about this. If we are a place, that we are a church planting organization, when people leave and they go do other things from the aspect of being here and being a part of this ministry, it really is church planting. I mean, you really are being a church planter in a new in a new place, and taking a lot of the things that I think are instilled in us through One Life and the ministry here. And I think that's beautiful. I really do. Yeah, and I see that.
I wouldn't have been able to do this, to move to a position like this, without the experience that I've had over the last 10 years. Yeah.
Well, that's it is a good reminder, and I'll take that under advisement. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, sure. That's putting a bright side to it. No, we kind of kid that we partner with Community One, but we didn't know that's what part of the partnership was. So we're ending that partnership in a hurry. Like, what the heck?
Got a couple former One Life staff over there now.
Oh, we do. We actually do. Yeah. So, but it is, and as I look at your own life, and it has been 18 years, and life does travel in seasons. I've learned that enough. Sometimes it's best to make those transitions because you're just in a different place in your life. Your kids are a different stage of life, and it's just not quite the same as it had been. And so, it's good for you. It's healthy for you to take on a new challenge this season, all those kinds of things. So.
Yeah, I do feel like that should be noted, that I do have a kid going to college
right.
In the fall. And so that was another part of the decision, that
right.
Just that we'll have some more flexibility to be able to visit her and see her, or even be home when she's home and be present. So that did play a part in, ministry does fill your weekends. Mm-hmm. And so this was just a good family shift for us too.
It'd be really interesting at first. I mean, Sunday of not being, right now Sunday's a work day for us. I mean, we consider it that. And I know we don't think of ministry all the time as work, but it is a day that we consider a work day. And so that would be really like an odd thing. And then right now, Fridays tend to be one of our days off, and switching that will be interesting.
And Saturdays are your days where you get the text of the people for Sundays. So.
Yeah. So what are the downsides to kids ministry? That's the next question.
It really is one of the questions, and I think more of, can we couch it? Because I think we've had a lot of positivity, and I don't want to bring it down. But obviously, I don't want you to hold back on anything either. But I mean, when we think about, if you're telling someone about what this role is like, as we even make a search for someone to come in and have some new eyes and new looks at kids ministry, and which is exciting, because I don't think we ever replace people. I think we just find new things that we can look at with it. What would you want them to know? I mean, what would you want people to know about working in kids ministry? And like you talked about some of the joys. What are some things that are hard? That obviously we don't all get to see and be a part of.
Yeah, it does have some hard elements to it. In any organization, there's never enough volunteers.
Yeah.
There's never enough. And as we talk about kids having a relationship with leaders to where they feel safe and can talk about anything, we just don't have enough leaders. So that's hard to watch on a Sunday, where you might have 25 kids in a room and 2 leaders who are just trying to keep their head above water. Mm-hmm. That's hard to watch. And then there's other Sundays where, we've got a leader for every 8 kids. So there's its ups and its downs. It's hard to turn off.
Yeah.
Well, ministry is hard to turn off, because you are so invested in the kids, in their lives, and in the lives of the leaders. I mean, when there's hard stuff going on in your leaders' lives, it's hard to turn that off, because you want to be there for them. They are your family. But I mean, ultimately though, it really is fun. It really is just life-giving to be able to see people change the next generation and point them towards Jesus.
Yeah, and relying on the volunteer thing, and there's not enough leaders. I've said many times that one of my goals before I die or leave ministry myself is that I want there to be 110% volunteers in kids ministry. But I say that kind of tongue in cheek, because I kind of also know that may not happen, or probably won't happen, because it's just the way it is. And people, what would you say to people that are, as they struggle with that? Because I think it's, number one, it can be intimidating.
Sure.
It can be consuming. And so I'm a little afraid to go down that hallway. What would you want them to know about, hey, come on in, the water's fine? How would you convince someone of that? Because obviously there's people having fun back there somewhere.
Yeah. One, they'd probably have to give it a little time. It's not going to be perfect on their first time. And it might be one of those Sundays where there are 25 kids and 2 leaders. If people can hang in there.
Okay, there can be. Oh no!
Yeah. If they can hang in there, and people can just continue to say yes, where it can take our kids ministry is just is huge. I mean, if we had 110, people back there, then
right.
It would be really simple.
Yeah.
Because you would have a small group of 2 or 3 kids.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's kind of how it works. But.
So, I guess my best advice would just be to, now when you're working with kids, it's hard to stay cool. It's hard to, because you have to be fun. You have to be energetic. You have to. So if that's not your thing, that kids ministry probably isn't your thing.
But aren't there also roles that you don't necessarily have to interact with kids
Absolutely.
directly?
Yep.
Because some would be that way. Like, there might be a few out there that I don't really like kids that are under 10 years old or something, and I'd be intimidated by hanging out with first graders.
Right.
But it's not necessarily that way, right?
No,
you
it
can
doesn't
go back
have to
there
be.
and do some jobs that.
Yeah, there's tech. There's we have people who set up, during the week, who set up stuff so that leaders that are with kids can come in and just be with kids, because everything is there for them, provided for them. All they have to do is focus on the kids. So there's a lot of behind the scenes, and there's all kinds of roles.
And you can, get to see behind the scenes and impact it kind of almost indirectly in a sense.
Right.
Like what I heard you say was, I can be one of those adults that helps the other people interact with kids and fulfill a role. So
you're hoping to create that experience for them.
That's cool to roll. Yep. And again, the goal is to also give you a connection point. It's not just volunteering. It's not just running lights for a kids team. It's getting to know the other people that are working in the kids team. And so if there's a crisis in your life or whatever else, you have family that you're connected to. And that's very, very important if you're going to be a part of a church.
Right.
Church life.
And they still, no matter what your role is, if that's tech, if that's one-on-one with kids, if that's, curriculum support, they're huddling together on Sundays, they're praying together, they have communication among each other. So like you said, they are, connecting even outside of that hour on Sunday morning.
And we sum it up this way, and we haven't said it in a while. The it in life is doing God's will with people you love. So there's that sense of our mission is we're impacting these kids, but we're doing it together. Right. So that's where the magic is. And if you've never really experienced that, you need to. I would recommend that to anybody.
Yeah. And I even stuff we talked about earlier in the episode of talking about some of the things that the joys of seeing kids really hear and understand the gospel and be connected with people. That happens when you do have the ability for people to show up and be there in their lives. So that's the goal. It's not to get people in there to fill a space. It's them in there so they can feel an opportunity to get to know a child and give them a place to belong. And so that's what it's all about, I think. You can, I'll do a plug for where you can sign up. If you want to do that here at One Life, or if you're listening in another church, check out local church. Ask about kids ministry. You can go to onelifechurch.org/connect. You can fill out a connection card there, and that goes to our Next Gen directors. I don't know who it goes to at the East Campus right now, but it'll go to somebody. It goes to Brett. It doesn't go to Brett.
Yeah, we're trying to answer that question. If it gets to me, that might cause a problem.
And if you're interested in a job, onelifechurch.org/careers, the job is posted.
That's true. That's true.
It's up there. Okay, I have one more question, but I want to see if Brett has any questions before I ask this one.
Oh, I don't think I do.
Okay.
Not at this point.
Andi, anything else that we didn't get to talk about that you would highlight?
Yes, I didn't mention Big Deal Theater.
Oh, talk about Big Deal Theater. What is Big Deal Theater?
When we talk about partnering with parents, one of the biggest things that we've done over the last 10 years is Big Deal Theater. And that is basically bringing the parents into what their kids experience on Sundays. It's usually Friday night, and we invite parents and kids to this fun night of worship and Bible story and pizza and games and all this, so that the kids can say, Mom and Dad, here's what I get to experience. And so it's just a great way to connect to the parents to what we do here at One Life, and then to take it home.
Yeah, and it's always fun. I mean,
it's a really good time.
It's good because they get to interact and see it, and the leaders really think of a way to connect with kids, but also with parents. There's some little jokes in there that parents probably only get, which is pretty funny.
Yeah,
so
just like any good cartoon has.
That's right. Exactly.
Yep.
Okay, I have one more question.
Okay,
it's kind of fun. Maybe we'll see. All right, what have you always wanted to say, but since you work here, you couldn't?
Well, let me tell you something.
Yeah, careful.
No. I don't know.
I know, there's nothing really. I just think that's
right. Nothing's left unsaid.
It would probably be more towards like people to just come on, get up and do something and help change the worldview of the next generation. It's just, it's time.
What else can you say?
Yep.
That's right.
What else can you say? Andi, I'm going to miss working with you.
I'll miss you.
But I'm very excited for your this new opportunity. I'm excited to see how you help change our community. I think it's going to be really cool, and I'm ready to show up and mobilize in the community.
I'll give you a call.
Get on the list.
Give you all a call.
Oh, man, I bet. And, it's going to be different, and I'm going to miss you, and really thankful for everything you've poured into One Life, to people, to friendships, and thank you.
Thank you. It's been a really fun ride. Really, really fun. It will be different. Sarah's getting emotional.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, man. I'm sorry. I would take it from here, but I don't know what to do. So
I've already texted her twice for lunch.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Go to lunch lot.
Well, it is awesome. You guys are that good of friends. And,
Yeah.
That's
traveled
a
a couple
win
times.
Out of the hall. Yeah, I remember that.
And One Life has been my family for the last 10 years and will continue to be, but it has. I'm so grateful for those relationships that I've been able to form over the last 10 years and 18 years.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
All right. Brett, anything to close with or anything upcoming here at One Life? I know we have Karen Kislin going to be teaching here in a couple weeks.
She is in a couple weeks. We're coming up on a new series called Overcoming Heard It All Beforeism, which is kind of going at the Bible. A lot of people have a basic familiarity with the normal stories of Jesus' life and all that, but we want to teach people how do you get past. Like this week, I'm doing the Good Samaritan, which is probably the most famous story in the Bible, and everybody's heard it before. But how do we freshen it up and kind of develop ears to hear it? And Karen Kislin is going to do that because she told me her title yesterday. It's called the ugliest mom in history or something like that.
Oh, man.
I don't know what even that means. But then she started describing it to me about talking about worms and all kinds of stuff. So what Karen has the gift of, I like her in this series because she has the gift of, she will take the approach with the Bible like you've never heard before. Yeah. I promise that's going to happen. That's going to be on Mother's Day. So
trying to get her on the podcast too, to continue that conversation.
Yes, yeah, because that will be the goal is to really be willing as you don't know it all and you want to go in and just rediscover the Bible in a whole new way.
And I got just a little sneak peek. I haven't seen the finished product yet, but Jimmy's making some really cool stuff for the creative for the series. And,
all right. I did not know that. I'm glad
taking some ideas that I talked about that I'm really excited to see come to life. So
glad I showed up today.
Yeah, me too. All right, guys. Thanks again for listening. If you have any questions for Andi or want to just reach out and say anything, send any notes of encouragement, thank you. You can send them to the podcast at onelifechurch.org, and I'll make sure that she gets them. I'll hand deliver them. I'll print them out on our printer. And I'll take you to lunch, and we'll go get those. But thanks again for listening, and we'll see you again next time.